Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the end of week number 3 of January 2020. We've got a lot going on today, boy, in this small cap universe. Edward Milewski is here joining me today to give you the play-by-play on the S&P 500, the ups, the downs, the all-arounds, the Voyager bands, the relative strength index, you name it, he's got it.
We had a big move in a company that a lot of people thought was going to go to zero, Tesla.
Yeah,
Tesla's flying like I think it's doubled now in 3 months.
Really?
Something like that. Which, look, we're talking about $100 billion company.
Yeah.
So it doubles, like going from say 45 billion to 90 billion.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it wasn't that long ago. I think it was less than a year ago. It was $180, and here it is now $530.
No kidding.
This week, a lady was on CNBC who was originally saying the model doesn't work. And not when I say the model, the valuation model. And now they've come back, looked at it, and said if this thing starts to throw off money, it is the de facto leader in the electric car vehicle automaking process. She says that this thing could be $1 trillion company, which would mean it would have to go to $5,000-$6,000 a share.
And
in 5 years.
Do you know how many cars they'd have to sell annually to actually justify that multiple?
No. How many?
Okay, let's give it 100 to 1 multiple. They would have to sell probably 400,000 cars a year globally.
Yeah. Well,
but if they achieve that, where's he at now? How many cars is Tesla making today?
I don't know. I think they need to secure.
They just opened up China.
They need to secure their copper supply.
Well, this is one of the great unsung opportunities. One of the heroes of the Tesla stories is copper, and especially given that the copper companies that have proven deposits are trading at pennies in the ground. Full disclosure, Crown Mining I'm talking about, of which I am a shareholder.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah, so it's, when copper breaks $3 on a sustained basis, those companies are going to deliver some badass returns to investors. I think that will be, generational opportunities for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, if copper breaks the old high of 329, which I think happened early last year, I can't remember exactly. It doesn't matter. The point is, if once it gets going, look at palladium. Palladium's up $1,000 an ounce.
Jesus.
That's this year.
Just this year.
2-3 years ago.
Last year.
2-3 years ago, it was $200-$300 an ounce.
I remember.
Now it's $2,200 an ounce. It's
unbelievable.
A 10-bagger.
A 10-bagger.
Palladium.
Just like us.
Jesus.
Woo!
I'm a 68-bagger.
68-bagger?
Yeah, I had 68 times my birthday.
I'm a 5.6 bagger.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. 5.6. I'm a 6.8.
6.8.
Okay.
Anyways, so what about cannabis? Is cannabis ever going to come back? It's done very well this week.
Well, this has been a stellar week. I think of a short cover rally.
Yeah.
Weed, which earlier in the week was looking like I thought this can't go, and we're I think several dollars above $30.
Yes. Yes, and even Aurora.
Tilray was down to 15 and change, and they had the guy on TV earlier in the week. Kennedy's his name, I believe.
Brandon Kennedy, yeah.
And I mean, the damn thing was earlier in the week was $23 US.
No kidding.
Flying. All kinds of money made. The ETF, chug-a-lug, just moving along. The HMMJ.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Anyways, so it seems like, earlier this week, Trump and China made kissy, lovey-dovey to each other, and it seems like look at the S&P setting new records again every day this week practically, and
every day.
Exactly, and so the question is, what sector is not going to be hot in 2020 in Q1, given that cannabis is doing a turnaround, commodities are looking stronger, led by copper and gold. Like gold still hasn't given back everything that it gained as a result of the Iran situation.
Like the previous high, I think, was earlier this year was 1565. When we had the problem, it got to 1612 momentarily, and then it looked like, okay, let's kiss and make up before we blow ourselves to smithereens.
Right.
So it's 1555.
Yeah.
1555 is higher than where it's been.
I know.
And we're at I think when it hit 16 and change the last week or whatever it was, that was a 6.5 to 7 year high. And you start hearing 6.5, 7 year highs.
Katie, bar the door.
Kate, yeah.
Batten down the hatches.
Yeah, do you know that the big thing that the Chinese are short of, that
soybeans,
pork.
Pork.
They got problems with swine flu, I guess.
Well, they had to kill half the pig population in 2018.
They want pork on their fork.
Pork on their fork. Well, who doesn't want pork on their fork? It's the other white meat.
Yeah, pass the fork and knife.
Pork on your fork. Do you remember that commercial? Put pork on your fork. Boy, that's an oldie. Anyways, we got some interesting guests coming up today.
Brent Willis from Voyager Pharmaceuticals will be on the line from Calgary.
You don't say. Well, after Brent, Colin Fisher is going to be here, joining us in studio.
Dan Mitri's here. We've had Dan on the show several times. Always insightful.
And finally, Penny White joins us from Yield Growth Corp. All that and more coming up on the show today. Stay with us. If you like the show, you'll love our website. Visit us at www.midasletter.com for interviews with key CEOs, cannabis news, and to subscribe to our newsletter. Our next guest is Brent Willis. He's the president and CEO of Voyager Pharmaceuticals, trading on the TSX Venture under the symbol VM. Brent, welcome.
How are you? Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate being on your show.
You bet. Brent, let's start with an overview. What is the business of Voyager Pharmaceuticals?
Well, Voyager Pharmaceuticals, we're focused on radio contrast products for the healthcare industry based on barium and iodine minerals. And we are moving forward to fully integrate from mining to the bottle, getting it out to pharmaceutical industry, and becoming fully integrated. We coined the term from the earth to the bottle. And by doing so, we believe we'll have the lowest ingredient costs in the industry, allowing us to be very competitive moving forward.
Global marketplace like for barium and iodine?
It's roughly around $7 billion a year. We're focused on North America to start our project, which is around $1.6 billion a year for iodine and barium contrast.
Okay. And so tell me about the projects where you're going to mine these substances.
Well, our barium resources are in BC, and our iodine resources are in Utah.
Okay, so barium and iodine don't occur in the same mineral deposit.
No, so barium's hard rock. Here's, I have a sample here of barite. It's white, it's environmentally friendly. It's hosted within a dolomite. You can see the dolomite on the side, and we just crush it and gravity separate it. And it comes into a small chunk like that, gets shipped to a milling facility, and is turned into a powder, which goes into a bottle of barium contrast.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so a lot of people don't really know what is barium and iodine used for in the pharmaceutical industry.
Well, with barium and iodine, they reflect radiation. So they're used to contrast within the body. Let's say you're looking for a tumor or you have heart issues. Barium contrast is swallowed or with an enema, and iodine contrast is injected. So we have injectables with iodine and consumables with oral consumables with barium sulfate. So a lot of people recognize it as what's called a barium swallow. A lot of people have taken barium swallows for throat issues and problems in the stomach.
Okay, so what point of development are you at in these deposits?
Well, our Francis Creek deposit, we drilled that in 2017. We defined a resource. We have approximately 62,000 tons of barium sulfate that is indicated, and another 69,000 tons that's inferred. And to give you a rough idea for our contrast business, 60,000 tons would be a 30-year mine life. So it's a very high margin business, and you don't need a lot of it. What's very unique about this is the purity of this deposit. We believe it's the highest grade deposit in the world. We just verified that with testing with SGS Minerals, which came back with over 98% barium sulfate content within our barite, which is very significant in this business.
I see. And what does the supply picture look like globally for barium and iodine at this point?
Well, on the barite side, there's only one supplier of natural occurring pharmaceutical grade barite, and that's out of China, and they're only allowed to export 5% of their production worldwide. So we'll have the only natural barium sulfate deposit outside of China. Our competitors, majority of them are buying man-made, what's called barium precipitate or blank fix. It's a very expensive product. And on the iodine component of it, there's an abundance of iodine. It's easily produced from brine water, and there are producers out of the United States that we have access to begin our project by buying iodine flake. And how it works is iodine flake is then turned into what's called iopamidol. And we're looking at building an iopamidol plant, which will allow us to be highly competitive in that business as well. So we are looking at producing our own iodine, and just as we're producing our own barite. So we are fully integration on both products, and we can start both projects by importing third-party minerals and begin cash flowing prior to getting our mines up in production.
I see. And when do you expect the mines to be in production?
Within the next 2 years is our goal. We should be doing a bulk sample on our barite project next year, which will supply us with a number of years of supply for our contrast business. And with the iodine, we'll be moving that forward over the next 2 to 3 years. And those are the kind of the timelines on actual production.
Sure. All right. And tell me, how much CapEx do you need to get to production on both these projects?
Well, the CapEx on the barium sulfate side is roughly between 8 and 12 million. We're working with SGS Minerals currently. We're doing a preliminary economic assessment. They should have all the CapEx information for us within the next 6 months. And upon finalizing the engineering on the project, we'll be moving forward with the financing to raise the CapEx for that. So relatively, it's a simple project. It's like a gravel pit, so to speak. It's going to be a quarry, not a mine, on the barium, and so it's a very low CapEx with high margin.
Sure. Okay. And on the iodine side, what's the mineral mining technique you anticipate?
Well, on the iodine's produced from brine water, saltwater brines, and it's one of the easiest minerals to extract from a brine water. A CapEx on a 200-ton a year blowdown iodine plant is roughly between $3 and $4 million US for a plant. And then to build a iopamidol plant, that is, we're currently working with an engineering company out of the US that's just going to start looking at that. Our estimates are around $50 million for an iopamidol plant.
Okay, so I'm curious as to, there's such a small source of supply for barium. Are there other deposits in the world? Like, I'm just trying to get a sense of the potential competitive landscape in the future if barium actually finds itself in short supply.
Well, there's a lot of barite in the world, but it's a matter of finding barite that is pure. The purity for a human being to ingest it, the metal content has to be extremely low, and barium sulfate is associated with base metals. So the Francis Creek deposit is very unique in that it's very clean. My brother and I, we've been in the barium sulfate business for over 30 years. We've looked at all the deposits in Western Canada. We've been around the world looking at barite, and we've never seen a deposit that is so uniquely clean. There's no mercury, there's no arsenic, there's a very clean deposit.
Well, that's great. And it strikes me that these are not exactly household words. Is the reception among the institutional investor marketplace pretty positive for this type of thing, or is it something that you have to educate before they actually are willing to invest?
Well, it's definitely a challenge when people have never heard of the term barium sulfate or barite or barium contrast or iodine contrast. But once people understand the market and our full integration plan, all of a sudden they start really understanding that this is a great opportunity, and we have a lot of upside moving forward.
Okay, great. Brett, we're going to leave it there for now. I wish you the best of luck on your development, and I look forward to following the story. Thanks for joining me today.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
If you're enjoying the show, subscribe to Midas Letter on YouTube so you stay up to date on everything investment. Bruce Campbell joins me now for the Stonecastle Asset Management Cannabis Week update. Bruce, welcome back. Bruce, so here we are at the end of the first week of Cannabis 2.0. What are you hearing about sales in the markets across Canada?
Well, specifically in Ontario, they've been extremely strong from what we've heard. And the fact that the edibles sold out the very first day, so apparently gummies were gone. Most of them were gone within the first hour, but by 3 o'clock, pretty much all of them were gone for sure. Chocolates were the same thing. The one interesting tidbit that we heard was there was a lot of vape product, and we heard quite a few conversations around the price of those vape products being so expensive in relative terms to say what you would get those for in the black market or in the US, which probably, I guess, isn't that surprising given, that was the same criticism of the straight cannabis to begin with as well.
Interesting. So is the expectation that there is going to be a supply deficit for the time being, similar to that which occurred when legal cannabis first occurred recreationally?
Yeah, that's what I think, and it's going to take a little bit longer because obviously they have to grow the product and then they have to manufacture the product. So there should be enough of the supply from the flower, but then obviously they're going to have to manufacture the product. So at the same time you're ramping up, you're increasing stores. So I suspect you're going to probably see much of the same type of issues that you saw with the dried flower, and even for that matter, when you look at something like Illinois, where they're experiencing the same type of things after they've gone legal from a recreational standpoint as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. So gummies and chocolates are big sellers, are they?
They seem to be. Yeah, everybody likes their sweets, I guess.
Interesting.
Which is a little bit surprising after right after the New Year, right? You sort of think it would be something other than that, given probably most people have New Year's resolution not to eat so much.
Right. Isn't January when most people head for the gym and stay away from intoxicants?
That's right.
Although I know in my case that certainly didn't happen this year. Okay, so also we had the announcement that Canopy Growth has delayed its launch of its beverage line. What's behind that whole story?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't go into a lot of detail, but just from some of the speculation that we've heard, it really revolves around the onset and the offset. They did a tour of one of their facilities, I believe it was just before Christmas, and they actually sampled product. It didn't have any cannabis in it, and so it seemed like they had formulations down, and now they've announced this delay. So it's the speculation is it's around the onset and offset of the cannabis in the product. And I mean, this has been something that's been pretty challenging in the past. As we've talked about before, it can have so much dependence on, sort of what your chemistry is for the day, what you have in your stomach, things like that, that it's hard to predict. That being said, we are a little bit surprised. Canopy's got a few different partners that they work with that have water-soluble technology, or at least claim to have water-soluble technology that affects or certainly can have an impact on the onset and the offset. Because at the end of the day, they want this to be similar to alcohol as far as the time it takes for you to ingest it and feel something, and then also the time it takes to sort of wear out of your system, because that's what people are used to. They've been doing that for over 100 years now, and that's really the experience that they want. So we're a little bit surprised that the Canopy ended up here, and it probably comes, what would be a worse time for them, but maybe it helps their competitors as well.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. So the World Health Organization announced that it's moving towards descheduling cannabis globally as a class 1 substance. So you think that's going to be a sort of precursor to federal deprohibition for the United States?
Well, certainly it could be. I mean, if you go back in history when Canada was a year ago or a little over a year ago when we were going through that process and going to be rec, that was one of the criticisms, is that we were actually going against some of the law that's out there, and that this would be a major issue. Well, if you have the World Health Organization starting to deschedule it, then maybe that leads to sort of United Nations freeing up their classification of it, and then presumably that would allow someone like the U.S. and maybe some other countries to make it legal, or at least to adopt it a little bit quicker down that legal pathway.
So do you think that that's going to encourage other countries to accelerate their embrace of medical cannabis?
Well, I think it will. We've already seen quite an acceleration worldwide, right? If you go back sort of when Canada first rolled out our program almost 20 years ago now, compared to what we're seeing in the last sort of 2 years, there's been this huge acceleration. So the curve's gone really steep. It's that hockey stick, really, where there was only a few countries that had come out with any type of medical programs, and then the last couple of years you've seen just sort of country after country sort of pile on and look at that. Now, if we were to see World Health Organization come out and say that they were descheduling it, and if it was no longer criminally classified under the UN accord, then you might also see more acceleration as well.
Well, that's interesting. Some of the market technicals. Let's talk about HMMJ and weed. What's the what are the charts telling you about the near-term future of the cannabis market there, Bruce?
Yeah, we track this quite closely at Stone Castle, and what we've noticed that over, say, the last probably 8 weeks, we saw a declining momentum in a lot of the indicators that we saw, like downside momentum. And typically when we've seen this in the past, it's scheduling or showing us that there's going to be some type of change. And of course, we hadn't experienced that. We went through tax loss selling the first week of the year, and we still weren't seeing that. There was a lot of people sort of scratching their heads trying to figure out what that meant. And then this week, you saw good numbers from Organogram, which really sort of started to accelerate things. So if you look at the charts of say Canopy would be sort of the leader. If you look at the a MACD momentum indicator on a weekly basis, it's really the amount of negative momentum has been waning, and then back in December it actually crossed positive, and now you're seeing that same move from the HMMJ, which is obviously more broad-based. And at the same time, you're seeing something like Canopy. It's recapturing a lot of its moving averages that it's been lost in the past. So, if you're a pure technician, you lots of people sort of from a very simplistic state look at the 50 and 200-day moving averages. Well, they're now they've recaptured those 50 days, and they're moving in on the 200-day, and they have positive momentum. So it looks like that tide that's been, sort of 8.5 months in the decline is now starting to shift, and we could see several months here of positive, which is typically what happens. Is the sector, we talk about there being 7 previous downtrends, and now we're starting the 8th uptrend. So it's always we don't know where it's going to go from an upside perspective, but what we know is that the tide has really changed here.
Yeah, well, from our perspective, we've noticed that the large cap cannabis index, which is all the companies over $1 billion in Canada, or over 500 million now. We actually backed it up to, because we were going to lose too much of the index. They've all, trended completely reversed, and the whole week has been green. And then also in the CSE, which is the proxy for the US MSOs, those two are both doing very well. But all the ones in our venture cannabis index, which is the $100 to $500 million companies operating in Canada, and then those are the companies that are just on the venture index, and all the companies in our small cap index, which is the 100 to $500 million companies. Those ones are both still looking a little bit anemic. And so it seems like it's really become, on the one hand, it's the titans who are battling it out and are leading the recovery. And on the other hand, there's a real sort of push and pull between the US MSOs and the large cap Canadian ones. So who do you think's going to win that battle in 2020?
Yeah, so looking at this year, I think that there could be multiple opportunities in both of those areas. So if you look at the Canadian side, obviously to start with, we're seeing a lot of these Canadian 2.0 products being sold out. So there's going to be a ramp up there. There's also a ramp up in retail, and so there's going to be money that's driven to the big Canadian stocks. There's also an opportunity in the U.S. And then maybe that happens later on in the year. As we see some of the challenges in the U.S. start to get ironed out, as an example, Illinois, they're running out of products as well. And, sort of as that's ramped up, or we get closer to, something happening in New York or New Jersey. So there could be multiple opportunities in multiple areas, both Canada and the U.S. over different timeframes. And then even in Canada, as you mentioned, the large caps have been the ones that have really been driving, but that's pretty normal when you've come out of a bottom. You tend to see the biggest stuff move first, and then people start to go down cap looking for opportunities, and as they see those, they invest in other areas. So that's where you could start to see that 100 to 500 start to move once people are comfortable that, yeah, we started a new uptrend, and now let's look for the companies that haven't moved or have the maybe higher torque to their business.
Right. All right, Bruce. Well, that's very insightful contribution as usual. We're going to leave it there for now, and I'm going to come back to you next week. Thanks very much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Take care. Have a good weekend.
If you like the show, you'll love our website. Visit us at www.midasletter.com for interviews with key CEOs, cannabis news, and to subscribe to our newsletter. Yeah, Alticore Capital had a conference this week that was very well attended. I ran into Bruce Linton just outside of the conference, actually.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Did you when you ran into him, did you knock him over?
No, it was funny. I was wearing my tweed baseball cap, and he was wearing his tweed jacket. So we just kind of pointed at each other and chuckled. Chuckled. Also, so this is funny. I also got a call from Terry Booth at Aurora this week. Terry's going to be in town in a couple of weeks, and we're going to have him on the show.
You know what? That stock got down to under $2, I think, recently, but
bouncing off the bottom.
Well, there seems to be a short cover rally, I think we've seen about $14-15 off the low now on weed.
No kidding.
It's almost a double.
I know, eh?
And it doesn't take long.
Jesus.
And when you think
Well, I think that the going into the later part of the first month of the third quarter, would you say that markets are characterized by optimism?
Boy, I'll tell you. You know what? You're starting to see people say that this doesn't make sense. The multiples are crazy.
Ray Dalio, I mean, he's calling for, I think Bridgewater came out earlier in the week and said, gold's going to be 2,000 US very soon. So we should be buying gold stocks.
Well, some of them, or bullion, or both. Beef bullion.
It's funny, I keep seeing people reiterating the argument against gold, saying that it doesn't pay any interest, which, it's not really relevant to say it doesn't pay interest. What you should say is, does it or does it not deliver a return on your investment? Interest is one form of a return on investment.
Yeah, income, yeah.
Capital gain is another form of return on investment. And so it's like, well, who cares if it doesn't pay interest as long as it returns on your investment? That's what matters, not whether it pays interest or not, because certainly treasuries don't really pay interest and don't really deliver a return on investment.
Yeah,
except in certain circumstances.
Midweek, the 10-year rate was below 180, and it recently got to 195, and it looked like, I don't know, the central banks look like they're going to print and ad infinitum.
Well,
print.
ECB's printing 2.3 billion euros a month right now.
And that what was the overnight thing? That hasn't gone away. They're having to get in there and
the overnight money market window,
whatever.
Yeah,
the overnight train.
Bastards. Well, it was funny. Earlier this week, the Wall Street Journal published an article, front page, saying the era of Fed power is over. Prepare for a more perilous road ahead. And in it, the author made the point, it was a piece written by Greg Ip, who's a Federal Reserve follower, and he makes the point that the Fed has really lost its ability to drive markets because the markets now drive the Fed. And that's an incredibly insightful perspective, if you ask me, because as early as 2011, I believe it was, Barack Obama was on television saying, I am targeting stock market prices with this measure called TARP because we know that confidence in the economy and the willingness of people to spend is directly correlated to the confidence that they have in the stock market. So if we can make the stock market generate the confidence that people need to spend and invest and go out and try new things, the economy grows. If people look at the stock market and things are tanking, everybody pulls in their horns and sits on their hands and doesn't want to do anything. So in some ways, given that we're all driven by delusion anyways, it's very helpful for the Fed to being, out of the picture, because there's 12 of them and they can never make up their minds as to which way things are going.
Right.
And now all we have to do is point at the S&P close and say, look, we're up another 15% on the day.
Apple earlier in the week was reaching a valuation of 1.4 trillion. 1.4 trillion, not billion. Trillion. That's 1,400 billion.
That's a lot of cell phones. And iPads.
Look at remember 07, 08, it looked like, we had all these mortgages and, the AAA, whatever, this bullshit thing that they perpetrated on the
securitized assets,
and then that the world almost blinked. Now they're talking bank earnings were earlier this week. JP Morgan, excellent,
Amazing.
Yeah. If rates stay low, gold's marching higher. And it looks like rates are, they're going to keep.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Next up, Colin Fisher joins us from StableView Asset Management to talk about technology. If you're enjoying the show, subscribe to Midas Letter on YouTube so you stay up to date on everything investment. Colin Fisher joins me now from StableView Asset Management. Colin, what's new in technology?
It's interesting. The number of companies I've said, here, buy this company, it's a great company, and then it gets fucking sold to somebody.
Right.
For pennies on the dollar, and the Canadian marketplace sits back. We fund our companies in the most egregiously bad ways. The way funding works in the Canadian public market right now is, so below 50 million is dust desert dry. Below 150 million, there may be a few drops of water. Below 250 million, maybe you get intermittent rainfall from time to time and you have something growing. But in general, we've created an ecosystem where there's no competition for capital. Down in the States, what you get is there's a good company and they go after that company. But in Canada, we don't know. We don't understand these things. So we're like,
So what do you think is the fundamental deficiency in the Canadian market that causes this reality?
Well, I think it's like anything. Why do you not in all markets where it's a complicated buy, it's education. We have generalists writ large in Canada, and we don't have specialists. And we particularly don't have specialists in the technology space. And what you find is that these are not easy acquisitions, or understanding of the company, because you can have the exact same technology, and you go to market strategy is different for one. So there's a private company that's doing some very interesting thing in the paper flow of deals and papering of deals and getting investors in and all this stuff.
Dealmaker?
Yeah.
Yep, Dealmaker is what the Bullet ID is on.
Right. So there's a bunch. So interesting company. I like the company, but they're not actually that unique. There's other software, but some people are going proprietary on it. So you can look. There's about 2 or 3 investment banks that have invested their own platform for themselves.
Recreating the wheel that already exists in DocuSign.
Well.
What's some extra features?
But you have to be very, so for me, this is where the simplicity falls apart, right? So you have Visa and Plaid, for example, right? So Visa buys Plaid. Visa is a payment system extraordinaire. Why are they buying that? they're buying it for a specific problem that they're solving, which is in part they've created the train, the train tracks, and it's not the payment processing. Anyone can do that. It's the ancillary elements that they've already tied into all of these different elements, and they've got that, and they can go out and make that snapping. And I think part of the reason they pay more for it, going back to the competition of capital, they're like, if I don't buy it, somebody else buys it, and it puts me at a deficiency. And whereas with VersaPay just is getting bought, and I think so. Great Hill Partners bought it. They got a steal, in my opinion.
Private equity group?
Private equity out of Boston. But
VersaPay has been around for a long time. It's a very mature platform, isn't it?
No, dude.
I thought VersaPay has been around since like 2012.
Yeah, but what it was before versus what it is now are two wholly different things.
Oh, okay. I haven't followed it since
Halle Berry at 6 years old versus Halle Berry at 32 is not the same transaction.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
So they used to do payment processing and all this stuff when it was probably, I'd say, only around the last 4 years when Craig O'Neill starts. That's the new generation. They build real software for accounts receivable automation. And that's the B2B payments. And the reason, and now that if you look inside the actual deeper area of technology and in the private equity space, that's actually one of the areas that's heating up the most. Plaid is sort of a part of that. Like the Visas, the MasterCards, they're trying to get the next level of people going over their rails, right? So VersaPay, if you go into a bunch of different areas, IDC put them up at the top 3 companies in the world for accounts receivable automation, for payment processing automation. So there's the payment processing, which is really sort of granular, nebby little stuff. But it's all the ancillary activities that get you onto that rail for the payment. And personally, you and I don't crack open a checkbook, but corporately, people crack open checkbooks all day, all the time. I know we had this conversation, you're a bit more of a modern company, but for the vast majority, checks exist. And the B2B payment space is still very much paper-based. And even if it isn't, even if you're using automation, the elements of where people go, they get an accounts receivable, gets payment into the bank account, then reconciling it with the accounts receivable software is a whole, like actually getting that whole flow to be automated, where you don't actually have to have humans go in and it's doing the reports. That whole process is sort of the next level. VersaPay just got taken from us. Canadian built, we had great management. StableView's been involved with that company for years.
The conservative nature of Canada's capital markets class prevents them from having an original leadership role.
Yes, that I agree with. But the capital in Canada takes risk. We had the weed trade, we have oil, gas mining, junior exploration, all that stuff. That is the Wild West. That is hard stuff. We have risk capital. We just don't know about it as well. I mean, if you look at fracking is a technological element. Like that was a brand new change. Like Goldcore was an open source. They took something from technology and they did an open source and they said, tell us what you see.
Yeah.
And we'll fund it. And if you do, then we're going to give you a slug of it.
Right.
But we have the risk. From a regulatory framework, though, we've busted the system. Try and price a private. You have to get into a Kama Sutra pose and write 3 more pages of the Kama Sutra to try and explain it to somebody. Then you have the problem of a lot of them are like, we don't go below $50 million. We don't go below 150. Like they'll have their own internal rate. Then they have a liquidity provision. So there's these problems that are drying up, in particular in the private, on the public side, writ large. So we've basically created this thing that says, do not invest in Canadian tech. You are a bad human if you invest in Canadian tech. And so the Americans are like, all right, dummies, thank you very much, we build great. The number of times I hear people going, oh, we don't have the skill set or the knowledge. And I just want to dive across the table and choke them out.
Well, I would say that in the capital space that we lack leadership and visionary leadership.
Well, that's why I'm putting together Garrison Creek.
Okay, well that's great.
So what I'm putting together is
an early stage investor?
I hate the terms.
Okay.
So let me tell you what needs to be true typically with what we're doing. I think there's a big slice of venture capital, but there's this desert past sort of the next stage. So maybe we can get stuff out of the ground. We have reasonable angels. We have reasonable venture, but then there's this desert of capital. So I've assembled 4 CEOs who have all built multi-billion-dollar companies multiple times. That's number one. The executional...
As your advisory board on this fund?
It's not an advisory. It's a board of directors.
Okay.
And it's not a fund, it's a corporation.
I see.
And there's 2 fundamental reasons for that. Because everyone says, remember, funds have a problem. You cannot invest over 20% if you're a fund. You cannot own more than 20% of a company. So I'm not a fund. This is not a fund, this is a corporation.
An investment enterprise, though?
Capital corporation.
Will it be a registered entity with the regulators?
Not from that perspective, but if we go public, it'll be regulated as much as a public entity is.
I see.
But it's a corporation. It's in the business of investing capital and taking active roles, i.e. we want to be above 20%. We want to go on boards. We want to provide guidance to management. You are precluded from being active with your companies if you're a fund. You have to be below 20%. You can't do certain things. God kill you if you actually try and help your companies in Canada as a fund manager, because there's this delineation, and there's no ability for the regulator to understand, are you doing harm or are you doing help?
Right.
So the only way to actually help companies is to be a corporation and take an active role. And people constantly say, we don't have the skill set. Well, I've got assembled 4 guys who've all built multi-billion-dollar companies. Well, let's assemble our own talent and put our capital to work in these companies. We're a capitalist society. However, we've regulated ourselves out of where buying another bank stock doesn't build Canada. Buying stock in a company that puts on jobs, builds, grows, innovates. Canada's been innovating for centuries. But at some point, we've said, don't do anything that will potentially cut your fingers. So we want to give the capitalist element of Canada, who are the surgeons. There's a lot of really smart people, but we preclude them from doing stuff. So now they're just constantly playing the game. So I'm coming to the conclusion that the game that should be played, and the one I play well in, is helping build, nurture, and find the talent in Canada. We need a Pied Piper in the Canadian tech space. Many of these endeavors have been capital guys trying to talk to other capital guys. I'm not that smart. Those guys can go and play their ARBs and their this and their that, and they can play the game of the stock market. I'm the guy who's going to carry the water and have been smart enough and understand maybe just enough technology for these guys to actually have conversations with me and go, let's solve this problem.
Thanks very much for joining us. We'll have you back soon. How can people find out more about the Garrison Fund?
Call me at, go to StableView.ca and call me.
All right.
Or email us.
If you like the show, you'll love our website. Visit us at www.midasletter.com for interviews with key CEOs, cannabis news, and to subscribe to our newsletter. Dan Mitri joins me now. He's the CEO of New Wave Esports. Dan, welcome back.
Hey, James, how you doing? It's good to be back. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, big 2020 ahead of us. You guys just had a big event, I understand.
We did, yes. So one of our companies that we own a minority stake in, actually as of recent, entering a definitive agreement to fully acquire, Even Matchup Gaming, ran an event on January 3rd to the 5th called Let's Make Big Moves. It's a big Super Smash Brothers tournament, and they absolutely crushed it. It was incredible seeing the community come out and support such an incredible event.
Sure. How many people?
Well, so let me give you the overview here and talk about why this was so important of an event and all the great success. So Even Matchup Gaming, for those who don't know, is a company based in Toronto. They actually run massive esports events through the year, about 80 of them. 2 big majors, one being Let's Make Big Moves and Get on My Level, as well as a whole bunch of other events through weekly and monthly. But specifically, Even Matchup Gaming ran this one called Let's Make Big Moves, and it's the first S-tier tournament in the Super Smash Brothers realm of 2020. And it was held at the iconic New Yorker Hotel in New York, New York, and live streamed on Twitch. And this was their first major of the year. So it was, hey, we're beating our chests as the first major coming out. Come on out and enjoy an incredible tournament. But over the 3 days, we saw just over 1,000 fans put on their pants and come out to the New Yorker and celebrate an incredible competition with us, where we saw 750 athletes participate and just over 340,000 people watching online with us on Twitch. So it was a critical success. And some may be asking, well, what makes a tournament an S-tier tournament? Well, according to the Panda Global Rankings, an S-tier tournament has to have a certain quantity of high-ranked players within the Smash scene. And we certainly saw that. So we saw some incredible names come out and compete with us. People like Samsora, Nairo, Mars, DeBuzz, Raito. We saw 22 top 50 globally ranked Smash players come out. So the caliber of fighting that we saw on screen and on stage was absolutely phenomenal. And that certainly translated to the energy that we saw there, not only on site, but also online. And so the last thing I'll also say on the S-tier tournament is that this was the first S-tier tournament held in New York overall. So this was a monumental moment for esports and for even matchup gaming, and it was also the largest ever single game Smash Ultimate competition held on the U.S. East Coast region. So we're very excited to see such an incredible resonation with our community, and congratulations to the winners.
Yeah, you bet. So are there cash prizes involved?
There's a whole breakdown there, and that was shared between multiple winners. So in the singles bracket, we saw Nairo actually take the prize purse there, and in the squad strike, we saw Tyler Martins take the first. And then we had some doubles as well, so we had some teams actually competing. And the first place winners were Dark Wizzy and Light. So we played through 3 different modes and really brought a good diverse mix to the gameplay between the Smash 1, Squad Strike, and 2v2. But none of that could have been possible without our partners. Our partners really help us do a big lift there, allowing us to bring the biggest cash prize to the pool, but also subsidize a lot of the production lift that's needed to make an incredible experience. So, hats off to some partners like BenQ and eFuse, Masterhand Gaming, Waveform Entertainment, and many others. So we're looking forward to working with them in the future and continue to build an incredible scene around Smash.
Yeah, you bet. So there are tons of these tournaments going on now that Even Matchup Gaming puts on. What is some of the other big ones we've got to look forward to in 2020?
Yeah, so this was the first major of the year, and this paves way to Get On My Level 2020, which is going to be held in Toronto. And this is historically the biggest major of the year for us. So we're going to be making some big announcements of where we're going to be actually holding it specifically in Toronto. We'll be opening up registration, so those who want to come out and actually see it in person can join us or compete. It's a open tournament, but also obviously we'll be streaming online. But the importance of these majors for not only Even Matchup Gaming and New Wave is quite critical in the sense that we're both committed to leading this continued growth of the esports industry. Many investors are looking to events like this to get an indicator of its success and how well it's growing. Well, we're seeing that year-over-year growth. And we expect even more players to come out to Get On My Level and even more people to be watching online, which in turn offers a very smart and diversified opportunity for people to invest in the esports ecosystem as they see some of these events continue to be profitable and continue to grow the industry specifically. So through some of these events and when they are successful, we certainly see that we're able to demonstrate a AAA quality of production. That's key there. The esports industry is rivaling those of traditional sports. And so we need to meet the same sort of production levels, but also need to keep it genuine to the community because that attracts publishers, it attracts people like, companies like Nintendo that allow us to use their game within our tournaments. It also attracts other big brands and sponsors coming in and making some of these events even more incredible and the experience held on site for our community. But again, we do this not only because to push esports forward, but because we have a love for the fighting game community. And so we hope through these majors that we attract not only new fans, but existing fans that have latched on to Smash, latched on to Street Fighter V and Tekken 7, all the other fighting game communities. So yes, none of this could be possible without our partners and the people that actually come out and produce the events, but we're really underpinned by our community that all makes it possible.
Sure, you bet. Okay, so some of these games are not necessarily in the fighting game community. Next to the fighting gaming community, which is the most popular category of games for esports?
That's a good question. I would say it's also it also correlates to just the gaming industry in general, and some of the units that are like some of the biggest units that are sold in certain genres, and that's going to be first-person shooters. First-person shooters dominate right now, and so that's why you see big franchises around like Counter-Strike Go, Overwatch to Call of Duty continue to be successful within their franchise leagues, and honestly, the communities that come out and support that. So. Even though fighting games are a very small niche within the esports industry, it's still a very much vital component because there is a community behind it that thrives off of events, thrives off of the athletes that come out and very much want to be a part of that ecosystem. So here within New Wave, we recognize that. We recognize we need to cater to the large audiences through first-person shooters, but also the small ones that enjoy their games even within that niche small community.
Mm-hmm. All right, so what are some of the big things we're going to look for in the esports industry generally in 2020 that are going to, send the message that this is an industry whose time has arrived?
Yeah, I think, there's a couple catalysts. You got Team Astralis, they're going to be going IPO. That's going to be huge for the industry. So, we really want to see Astralis perform and be successful, especially as, they're going public. That opens up even more opportunities for the world to get involved with esports. And I think with that success, we'll see some major growth there. We also have a lot of the franchises that are starting to get more dialed in. So looking at Overwatch, obviously Overwatch 2 was announced. You've got a lot of other games and new games that are going to be coming online. And you have the new consoles that are coming through. Consoles are certainly a catalyst of growth as well, especially with the new hardware, faster frame rates, bigger budget games between the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. And then you have all the PC partners that are going to be being kept up to speed with that. So there are multiple catalysts here, and we're listening to every single one of those. A lot of them do come straight from the publishers because they own the IPs on the games, but also the appetite of esports globally. So we're going where communities are thriving, and we're providing great experiences for them to continue engaging in the games they love and in the communities that they identify with.
Right. Okay, that's great, Dan. That's an awesome update. We'll leave it there for now and come back to you for next week's Esports Update. Thanks for joining us again. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Make sure you never miss a show by subscribing to our YouTube channel and clicking on the little notifications bell. If you're interested in getting monthly actionable investment ideas in the cannabis space to your inbox, subscribe to the newsletter at MidasLetter.com. I'm joined now by Penny White, CEO of the Yield Growth Corporation. Penny, welcome back.
Thanks, James. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, you're our first cannabis CEO of 2020, and so from that vaunted perspective, I'm curious as to how did you view 2019 and how do you view 2020 from the perspective of Yield Growth Corp and its growth prospects?
I think it was almost this time last year that I came on your show. We had just gone public. So Yield Growth went public in December of 2018. So we came out in a bad market, and then the market got really good in January. We had a great year really overall for our business, and our stock was a bit of a roller coaster being in the cannabis industry, just like everyone else. I think for us it was a real challenge competing as a brand new company with so many cannabis companies out there, so many products on the shelves. And what's happened is really over the past couple months, we've made a lot of progress in terms of there's less competition, and we're getting a lot more distribution agreements signed and a lot more notice for our products. So, so far, 2020 is starting out really strong for us. We've made a lot of progress over the past year. We've decided to broaden our business beyond just cannabis. So we've always been into plant-based medicine, and now we're looking at 2020 to launch a business into psilocybin and edible mushrooms too, which is really exciting.
Wow, that's interesting. I love edible mushrooms. I've always been a fan of them, and I always have a couple of chocolates around somewhere. What is the prospect for the legalization of psilocybin as a recreational and/or medicinal product in 2020?
I'm not sure that this drug will ever become fully recreational. I mean, it's a different type of therapeutic use than cannabis, but there's definitely a movement right now, a people's movement to really decriminalize this psychedelic plant-based medicine and make it available to people, because there's so many studies that have shown just tremendous benefits in terms of treating depression, anxiety, PTSD, eating disorders. There's a real renaissance of research happening in the psychedelic world, and people, they're not satisfied with not being able to access these great revolutionary treatments. So we see a couple cities that have said, look, we're not going to allow our police forces any money to go after anyone to enforce these on a criminal basis. But we also see some states, like I've seen Oregon is planning to put it on the ballot in 2020, possibly Washington as well. So if those states put the legalization, even if it's medical legalization of psilocybin on the ballot and they get approved, then you're going to see, I think, a cascading effect with other states and other countries.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I guess it will never be legalized recreationally because it's just too much fun for the average person. I have had occasion to see people who are having a bit of a less than perfect time on psilocybin, though like any strong medicine, it needs to be administered in the presence of a qualified individual. I'm going to stop short of saying doctor, because my psilocybin experiences have been administered by somebody called a shaman, more so than a doctor. But I digress. I digress so horribly here. Let's talk about, so what is the actual product mix look like for Yield Growth in 2020, and which provinces is all of your product available in? I tried your very nice lavender oil. That was very nice, and everybody who tried your products loved it. So what's it looking like?
It was just last year that we launched our very first product for Urban Juve. The first product we launched was our anti-aging serum. Since then, we've launched all 12 products comprising of our first line, and we've got them. We've got packaging that's compliant for Canada, the U.S., Europe, and special French rules for Quebec retail. And it's great that we've registered everything and cleared it for European distribution as well. So we're actually being sold in Canada, U.S., and Greece, and online around the world, but we've actually signed distribution agreements for about 14 countries. So we're just in the process of getting everything cleared for regulatory clearance in Latin America, South America. I hope that will be done in the next month. And right now we're negotiating pretty big distribution agreements across Europe, UK, and the US. So Urban Juve is, I'm really pleased with the way it's rolled out over the past year. And you may remember that Urban Juve doesn't have cannabinoids in it. It's a skincare line made of completely natural ingredients, and it has hemp root oil, which is our proprietary ingredient for which we filed patents, which we process ourselves. And it has hemp seed oil, and it has lots of rich terpenes from all the other essential oils in the products, which have terrific results for the skin. But what we're excited about also is that this lays down the framework to launch our CBD products around the world as they become legal and as the regulations become sort of set down in Europe and other places.
Sure. So Yield Growth Corp isn't so much interested in selling like dried flower and vapes and stuff for the recreational market.
No, so in addition to Urban Juve, we have Right and Well, which is a topicals line. It's really designed for therapeutic use, although technically it's being sold in the recreational channel in Oregon. It is a very high quality line of high dose THC topicals and edibles. And the edibles are just in terms of tinctures, but really we're trying to appeal to an older demographic that's looking to use cannabis to relieve pain. So we have a really great gel they can put on your body. We have a muscle balm, and we have a massage oil. So those products are all now manufactured, fully ready for sale in Oregon. And that's sort of where we plan to focus a lot of our efforts, is in the topicals line of cannabis. We don't really have any plans to do dried flower. We're really trying to reach either people who are looking for a great skincare treatment or people who are looking for pain relief.
Mm-hmm. So are you in the kind of arena where you would be of interest to a larger cosmetics conglomerate globally that might be looking for ways to gain access to a cannabinoid-related product line?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we have some executives and directors and advisors on our team from, big companies like MAC Cosmetics and Johnson & Johnson. And so we've definitely been always developing our company, crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's to make sure that we're a good potential acquisition. And the other kind of company that already reaches out to us, and we're in talks with different groups, is cannabis companies, because we have very high quality topicals products, and the cannabis companies, they haven't had necessarily the time to develop that. They're not really packaged good companies. A lot of them, they're focused more on flower, and so we are actually developing brands with very high quality products, and there's a lot higher profit margin in our products than just plain flour. So, I think it would be a great match for us to team up with an LP. I can see that happening in the next couple of years, whether that's, us acquiring an LP or the other way around.
Right. Okay, well, that's great. That's a great update. Thank you very much, Penny. We'll come back to you soon. Have a great 2020.
Thank you, and you too.
If you like the show, you'll love our website. Visit us at www.midasletter.com for interviews with key CEOs, cannabis news, and to subscribe to our newsletter. And there's our show for another week. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you then.